Welcome to Runcorn Christian Church. Now, whether you're at home or watching the service in our building, I want to remind you that we're a part of a community that embraces unconditional love and acceptance. I imagine that most people here at some point in your life have had to attend a funeral. This may sound a little bit crazy, a little bit far-fetched. It's just that some people actually look forward to going to a funeral. But before I move on, I'm not talking about mean-spirited, horrible, no good, terrible, bad people that take joy out of someone else's sorrow. I'm talking about nice people. People like you and me. You see, at a funeral, you get to catch up with people that you haven't seen for a long, long time. But more than that, much more than that, we get to hear the life story of a friend that we've lost. You know, the eulogy. A remarkable thing, the eulogy. And in 30 or so minutes, a summation is given of an entire person's life. In those 30 minutes, their character will be exposed in a way like at no other point in their life. Often the story is told of the hardships they had to overcome. Stories like that can be inspirational. You see, like it or not, sooner or later, we're going to face hardships in life. When you hear how that story of how God was there with grandma, with grandpa, with mum and dad through their hard times, it gives us confidence to know that God will do the same for us. The person who gives the eulogy is most often a son or a daughter. And the opening line regularly says something like this: I've only got a short window of time, so it's going to be impossible for me to sum up my mum's life, my dad's life, in the small amount of time allocated to me. Yet Jesus does just that. In Matthew 15, Jesus leaves Galilee. He walks all the way down to Tyre. As the crows flies, it's about 100 kilometers. But the way he walked, it must have taken at least 120 kilometers. The lady, he's done this walk, he must have been incredibly tired. And this lady approaches Jesus. She cares nothing about his fatigue. She just wants her needs met. I don't know about you, but when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, it's not the best time to ask me for a favor. In fact, most people back then wouldn't have given this woman the time of day, let alone anything else. Jesus sums up her entire life in just four words that would liberate her from her past. Now, before I tell you what these four words are, let's just pretend you and I are the person that has met Jesus on the story. What words would Jesus use to sum up your life? Would he say something like, he loved work so much, he was so committed to pleasure that it kept him away from my Father in heaven? Or how about this one? Your social media skills were incredible. Young man, your lack of patience is mind-blowing. Young lady, your devotion was incredible. Your perseverance was outstanding. What is the one area of your life that stands out as being greater than all other areas in life? Anyway, let's get into this. A Gentile woman. Now, a Gentile woman is anyone who are non-Jews, so probably most of us here are non-Jews, who lived there, came to him pleading, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter has a demon in her, and it is severely tormenting her. But Jesus gave her no reply, not even a word. Then his disciples urged him to send her away. Tell her to leave, they said. She is bothering us with all her begging. Then he said to the woman, I was sent only to help the people of Israel, God's lost sheep, not the Gentiles. But she came and worshipped him and pleaded again, Lord, help me. Isn't it right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs? He said, yes, Lord, she replied. But even dogs are permitted to eat crumbs that fall beneath their master's table. Woman, she said to her, your faith is great. Your request is granted. And her daughter was instantly healed. You know, sometimes when you're removed from a culture and then you hear a story from that culture, you can't really understand, you can't really see what's happening. I think 63 years ago, a similar situation took place in a different city, in a different culture, and all hell broke loose. The year was 1955. It was Thursday, the 1st of December, and we're talking about a culture that existed in the South, the deep South of the United States of America. A culture that militantly enforced segregation. On that day, a young girl by the name of Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks, was seated on a bus, and a white man got on the bus. The bus driver turned around and said, all you blacks have to get up and move to the back of the bus. We good white folk don't want to sit next to you lot. It's just Rosa didn't get up. And that act of defiance, that act of being sick and tired of being treated as a second-class citizen, sparked the civil rights movement. She was spat on, fined. Things got real messy before they got any better. The woman in this Bible passage I have just read is a nameless woman. She too had to overcome a great deal of prejudice. This woman was a Canaanite woman who came from the country north of Palestine. The Jews and the Canaanites had been enemies since the days of Moses. Hey, remember Goliath? He was a Canaanite. Still to this day, they are enemies. The Palestinians who lived in Israel today are the descendants of the Canaanites. It all started when the Canaanites rejected Yahweh, the God that Moses served. The Canaanites liked to worship another god called Baal. Now the Canaanites lived right next door to Israel. It's like if Israel was Brisbane, then Logan was Canaan. Geographically, they were so close, it was impossible to avoid each other. They couldn't go out of their way to avoid each other. They're in each other's faces all the time. The Jews looked at their faith system with all their rules and regulations and went, it's not fair. We're not allowed to steal. We can't commit adultery. We've got to treat people the way we'd want them to treat us. It's not fair. We have to follow all these rules, and none of these rules are fun. Those rules, by the way, we would say today, well, they're good rules. It's just the Canaanites didn't have any of these rules, and they're having all this fun the Jews were not allowed to have. I've heard it said, if you're sinning and it's not fun, then you're not doing it right. The Canaanite men are having the time of their lives, and sure, there will come a time when they will reap what they have sown. But that was a long way off, and they were just living for the moment. The young Jewish men felt they were missing out, so a large number of them took a break from worshipping Yahweh and started worshipping Baal. That meant they started taking things they shouldn't take and doing things they shouldn't do. It got so bad that before long, they were sacrificing children and forcing teenage girls into human trafficking. In response to their sin, God sent messengers. They were called prophets. And they would say, you've got to stop this or else God's going to punish you. Now, God never takes joy in disciplining people. He wants to bless people. It's just God's not going to bless you with something that your character cannot hold. He's not going to bless you with something that's going to ultimately hurt you. So God says, stop or else. And the Canaanites say, well, or else what? It came to the point when God could stand it no more. So he raised up a man by the name of Nebuchadnezzar to punish the Israelites. He conquered their land and took them away as slaves to Babylon. By the time Jesus walked the streets of Israel, there were still some of these Canaanites around, and they reminded Israel of their disobedience to God. The Israelites, they kind of blamed the Canaanites. If it wasn't for you guys being such a bad influence, we wouldn't have backslidden. And if we didn't backslide, then life would have been much better for us. You could say the Jews didn't like the Canaanites. They hated them. We don't know much about this lady as an individual, but I think it's safe to say that she probably didn't get invited to too many Tupperware parties. She was probably married and had at least one child, but that's all we know about her. We don't know her name. All we know is that the single encounter with Jesus, Jesus said 4 words to define her life. He said, your faith is great. Your faith is great. Only 4 words, yet these words tell us everything we need to know about this nameless woman. Now get a load of this. Jesus found faith in this lady he didn't always find in these disciples. Not once did he go to Peter and go, Peter, your faith is great. He didn't go to John, he didn't go to James, he didn't go to Matthew, he go, your faith is great. But he did say it to this nameless Canaanite woman that few people liked. Your faith is great. This got me thinking, what did this woman do? What that deserved such praise from God? Now, she probably did a lot of things. For a start, I think she got out of her comfort zone and did some things that she probably didn't come that natural to her. Or Wayne, what did she do to get out of that comfort zone? For a start, she was a woman. And women at this point of history were not held in the highest regard. Now, Jesus didn't endorse this. In fact, he attacked it continually. But in Jesus' day, a man could divorce his wife for no reason at all. He'd just go, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. That's all he had to do. A man could divorce his wife, kick her out of the house. He could keep the kids. He could keep his superannuation. He could keep the camel. Everything was his. At the same time, the woman had no right, regardless of what happened. She could never divorce a man. He could be a wife basher. She still had no right to divorce him. She could not vote. She could not stand as a witness in court. She could not own property. If anything, she was seen as a piece of property that a man would own, just like a man owned a cow or a donkey. As a woman, she had very few rights. To make matters worse, she was a non-Jew, which in their mindset of a Jewish culture meant God had rejected her. But wait, there's more. She's a Canaanite, so she's hated. She's an object of scorn. She was the mother who is in need, was prepared to cross any obstacle that came her way to turn to Jesus for help. Faith does that, you know. It demands that we cross barriers that stand in our way. Can I ask you a question? What barriers, what obstacles are in the way of God's best for you? We all face them. Obstacles like, I'd like to do that, but I'm just a little bit busy right now. When life settles down, I'll work on some of those spiritual things, but right now, I've got to take care of the here and now. I've got a lot of things happening. When the COVID thing, when that's all over, that's when I'll start getting with people and having fellowship, but right now it's just too hard, it's just too difficult, it's just too awkward. Obstacles like pride. Pride can be such a huge obstacle. I know God's given me abilities to serve Him. I can play an instrument, I can sing, I love kids, I'd be good at kids' church. But if the guys found out that I was in a church band, what would they say? Here's another obstacle. I'm not 100% sure I want to commit. I just want to see a little bit more first. I'm only going to commit to what I see. Thomas was a bit like that. He only believed what he could see. And Jesus said that he missed a very special blessing for that very reason. All I know is, if you want Jesus to say, your faith is great, then you have to push over a few obstacles. Now, not only did this woman push over a few obstacles, she was desperate. I don't know, maybe she tried 100 other things. All I know is she's not going to give up. She loved her daughter. Love's an amazing thing. Women have been known to run into burning buildings that are on the very verge of collapse. You go, Wayne, who in their right mind would run into a burning building when it's on the verge of collapse? I'll tell you, a woman who has a baby in that building, that's the type of person. Love will cause you to do things that don't come natural. That's what love does. Love always overcomes fear. Love will always overcome rejection. Jesus is walking by and this woman is making a scene, and what does Jesus do? He gives her the silent treatment. He doesn't even acknowledge her existence, but she won't stop. She's like a dripping tap. The disciples enter the scene and they go, Jesus, this woman is so annoying. Why don't you just send her away? Love made her suffer these horrible rebukes and rebuffs and insults and put downs from Jesus' disciples. Then he said to the woman, I was sent only to help the people of Israel, God's lost sheep, not the Gentiles. But she came and worshipped him and pleaded again, Lord, help me. She saw a compassion that would not turn her away. She trusted in the character of Jesus, not her self-works. The measure of faith is conditioned by what we see in Jesus. Somehow she could see his compassion. I don't know, maybe she's heard a story, maybe she read a verse of scripture that spoke of God's willingness to restore. All we know is she would not give up. Like an Energizer battery, when others gave up, she kept on going. This nameless woman refused to be put off. She refused to be intimidated. She was not going to take criticism, silence as an answer. She knew what she wanted, and she knew the one who could give her what she wanted. I don't know what you're going through today, but can I tell you this? You could be on the verge of a miracle or a brink of disaster, and the determining factor of which side of the coin will fall will be whether you give up or not. Now listen to this poem. 2 frogs fell into a can of cream, so it has been told. The sides of the can were shiny and steep. The cream was deep and cold. Oh, what's the use, cried number 1. It's plain no help's around. Goodbye, my friend, goodbye, sad world. And weeping still, he drowned. The second made a sterner stuff. Dog paddled in surprise, while he licked his creamy lips and blinked his creamy eyes. I'll swim at least a while, he thought, or so it has been said. It wouldn't help the world if one more frog were dead. An hour or more he kicked and swam, not once to stop or mutter, then hopped out of an island he'd made of soft-churned butter. The nameless woman pushed past Jesus' silent treatment. She pushed past the downs and the insults of Jesus' disciples. She pushed past a culture that said, it's your own fault. You're going to get what you deserve. Look at verse 24. Then he said to the woman, this is Jesus talking, I was sent only to help the people of Israel, God's lost sheep, not the Gentiles. What he had said in the text was, sorry lady, You don't belong to the right group. You have no claim on me. Now, she didn't try to analyze his response. She simply refused to be put off by it. So let her need speak for itself. She fell at Jesus' feet and cried, "Lord, help me, sir." That's the essence of great faith, to stretch out a hand to Jesus in desperation. I want you to notice something. She did everything she could, and yet at the same time, she was totally reliant on the grace of God. When our Lord told her that it didn't seem right to take bread from the children of Israel and throw it to the little dogs of the Gentiles, she didn't burst into tears and walk away. Instead, she gave Jesus an answer that excited him. She said, "True, sir. I admit I have no claim on you. But there must be some extra grace, some grace that I don't deserve. And I'm appealing to you for that." No wonder Jesus replied, "Woman, you have great faith." No wonder from that moment her daughter was made well. This mother possessed great faith because she'd won over her difficulties. Every obstacle, every opposition may be conquered through faith and prayer. The woman appealed to grace. Don't ever come before God and tell him what he can do or what he cannot do. Just appeal to God in grace. God owes us nothing, but he sure does love us. This woman appealed to grace. It seems to me that she knew, just like we know, that if any of us appeal to justice or the law, then we're in a whole lot of trouble. If we say, "Lord, you've got to do this because I deserve it," we're in a whole lot of trouble. We don't need more justice, but we sure do need God's grace. God bless, and I'm so much looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you for joining us online at Runcorn Christian Church. We're continuing to grow our online presence, so please check in frequently on our website and social media platforms to stay up to date with the latest services that we have available. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single video. To support the ongoing work of Runcorn Christian Church and partner in our vision, we'd like to invite you to give electronically. You can make a direct debit transfer using the account details that are on the screen and also on our webpage. Thank you again for joining us today, and God bless.